The Finish for Fuck by Jeff Wood. David was counting the minutes to his new colleague's arrival at the research station, staring down the barrel of 5 more months on this tiny, freezing island in the middle of the massive, freezing southern Atlantic was daunting at the best of times. The prospect of doing it alone was enough to give a man nightmares. Ever since the British Antarctic survey ship had dropped him off at Sydney 4 weeks ago, David had been plagued by unease, waking in starts and sweats from the trackless polar twilight, gabbling to himself like a spooked gull. The icy geographical centre of fuck all wasn't a fun place to raw dog solitude, especially with no reliable internet. So thank God, Dr. Helen Ross, brand new addition to the BAS team, was due to sail in tonight to take up the reins of the Tundral Ecosystem Survey. Admin hadn't uploaded her photo yet, but the mental image was of a pleasant-faced, no-nonsense woman in her early 30s with freckles and thick, soft hair the colour of dairy milk. Green eyes, ideally, though blue would do. Helen wasn't a lucky name for him, but David could overlook that. About 5'6", cute, and a little bit chubby, which is a practical defense in sub-zero temperatures, as well as a personal preference. Admittedly, David's daydreaming may have got a bit too specific over his recent alone time without online access to anything more stimulating than bird population spreadsheets. In his lonelier moments, he found himself jealous of the Gen 2 penguins, who are really going at it this year. Human company of any age, sex, nationality, or body type was all he really craved to fill the yearning abyss of boredom and isolation that crochet, good for manual dexterity, and romanticy, now he'd finished Game of Thrones on Kindle, couldn't. Even his ongoing attempt to learn Finnish, notoriously a real bastard of a language, wasn't enough distraction. He was, as the Finns would say, aivan melitoman kilostinat, bored out of his mind. Though he probably wasn't pronouncing it right. Ever since he'd been told to expect female company, David had been crocheting a bunch of flowers, the island's only flora being knee-deep moss and seagrass. He considered presenting them to Dr. Ross on landing before reluctantly concluding it might make him look like an absolute lunatic. No, he'd welcome her with a firm handshake and save the croquet bouquet for when they knew each other better. Antarctic summer was in full blaze, so it was a balmy -2. And snowing indolently as David trudged to the harbour. As a red-liveried BAS survey ship manoeuvred into the bay, he had to stop himself, rising on tiptoe and flapping his arms like a chin-strapped penguin spotting a shoal of especially juicy squid. The thrilling notion of exchanging words with another person in real time was intoxicating. What would they talk about? Taylor Swift? Sugar beet farming? Norwich City Football Club. He was pretty sure there was no subject Helen Ross could broach that he wouldn't eagerly plunge into a wide-ranging, in-depth, proper conversation about. At last, her slender, snow-suited figure appeared silhouetted black against the copper-bright sunset. As she dragged her sled of personal effects with impressive strength, he waved eagerly, and she responded with a laconic arm sweep. Was there something familiar about her movements? Or had he just not seen a woman for too long? Who cared? She was human. She was a woman! Approaching, she lifted the snow goggles from her, yes, green eyes. Her scarf dropped away to reveal a quiet smile, and she put out a mittened hand for him to shake. David's warm welcome died on chilled lips, and his face grew paler than a snow petrel. "Oh," he croaked. "You're that Helen." 10 years had barely changed her. Her quiet smile became a loud grin. "Hello, Dave," said Dr. Ross. "Jamie Ross was supposed to be my rebound boyfriend," Helen explained after dinner as she washed up, splashing everywhere, just as she used to, he noted. He spent the meal listening wordlessly to how his ex-girlfriend had pivoted from yoga teacher to Antarctic research scientist after their breakup. Well, David moving out, then ghosting her, but who was counting? Not Helen, he hoped. But after 6 months, I thought, why not? And got married. Hence the name change. Sorry, didn't mean to surprise you. Helen gave the half grin he remembered learning to dread. The, oops, did I finish the wine? Did I forget the bins? Was that your donut? Look, which meant she absolutely had intended to do whatever she had just done. Okay, but the survey job, I mean, that's quite a career change. Well, after you left, I decided to switch things up. Challenge myself, you know. Remember when you first applied for this posting and how I wrote your statement for you? He's bristled. Edited. Oh, yes, sorry, edited it from 2 paragraphs to 2 pages. She hunted out a clean tea towel by some sort of predator instinct. Remember your rejection letter said the statement was just what they were looking for and definitely apply again? And I said I should apply, and you laughed. No, David grunted, recalling it vividly. Yes, you do, Helen said, with maddening certitude. Anyway, the Croydon yoga scene was just getting too cutthroat, and Jamie was super supportive. Your first degree's in ecology, you could go back to your roots. Ha! David frowned, uncomprehending. Bryology humor. Mosses don't have true roots, of course, Helen explained. David grimaced. Still, Jamie sounded like an upgrade from his own half-arsed attempt at romantic partnership. Won't he miss you? She laughed. Oh, we're married, not surgically attached. He had a tough year in the Arctic, so he booked himself into a secure wellness retreat for a reset. He'll call me when he gets out. Oh, right. Then this gig came up and I thought, be nice to see Dave again. We never really talked afterwards, and hey, what better place and time to have those difficult conversations? You know, get some closure than here and now. David couldn't think of a worse place, time or something. Not even the mercurial fortunes of Norwich City Football Club. But they were alone on an island in the remote South Orkneys, 600 miles from any other option. Helen's freckled nose crinkled mischievously. Lighten up, Dave, I'm messing with you. Your face! By now she was grinning that other grin, which he now recalled with a shudder, always meant the exact opposite of what she'd just said. But the conversation didn't happen that evening, or the next, or even the next week. Despite David arming himself with apologies and excuses, mentally rehearsed over sleepless nights. In preparation for the inevitable showdown, while it was flattering that Helen had literally followed him to the end of the earth to thrash things out, David couldn't help wondering how she passed the psychological evaluation of this was her idea of reasonable behavior. So he didn't want to provoke her unnecessarily, and he chivalrously offered to cook every night to limit her access to sharp knives. But Dave, he startled awake. He'd nodded off watching the thing with her an Antarctic tradition. Spoiler, everybody dies, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Anyway, I better turn in. Big moss sample in the morning. However, Jota, he said absently. To keep his mind off the conversation, he'd been hitting the language CDs. The husky Finnish lady didn't listen to his concerns, but he'd learned 3 ways to say goodnight. Konita unia, Helen murmured, yawning. Sweet dream. That was one of them. How did Helen know Finnish? Had she been eavesdropping? What kind of sick mind game was she playing? David's dreams were anything but sweet. But as the weeks passed, it seemed Helen's first night joke about getting closure had been just that. Slowly, like a timid marine snail unfurling its tender horns, David swapped crochet, verb endings and romanticy for more time with Helen, which was a pleasant revelation after their previous uncomfortable existence as a couple. They played chess, Scrabble, battleships, watched horror films together. Still, she didn't bring it up. He gave her the latest gossip from the penguin colonies and seal pubs. She talked with arresting passion about her mosses and seagrasses and tardigrades, the invisible ecosystems that sustained tiny, stubborn life on this bare, rocky outcrop. They'd never been colleagues before. Belatedly, years too late to his bittersweet regret, David realized they'd never been what they were now. What they were slowly becoming. Friends. Your move. Her chest had improved since a split too. As he shunted his harassed king, her phone pinged. Rare, given the terrible coverage. Jamie says he's been offered carbonated colonic irrigation. Does it count as cheating? She gave that loud laugh snort he'd always hated, but was weirdly starting to grow on him. Anyway, checkmate. Rematch tomorrow? He remembered the crocheted flowers in his drawer, waiting for when they knew each other better. Was this the right time? Would it be strange? After so long, after vanishing without even a goodbye, which he now saw had not been only stupid, but unforgivably rude. Sure, Helen was married now, but David was here. And Jamie was in Downtime Abbey having fizzy water pumped up his arse. Maybe they could start again. Next morning, David strode into the kitchen carrying his crochet bag. It was time. Seize the day, grasp the nettle, find a vase. Morning, sleepyhead, said Helen, who was never up this early. She handed him a bacon bap, and he noticed with puzzlement that her rucksack and suitcase stood, stuffed like nylon foie gras skis, next to the snow-patterned kitchen window. Suddenly dry-mouthed, he nodded at them. What's all this? He said. Research day trip? She shook her head, face shining. Better. You know my moss survey? Yeah? The mosses were old friends now. Schistidium, Camplippus, plucky little Ditchum. Well, head office emailed last night. A job's just come up in the Arctic Circle. A scientific exchange comparing North and South polar mosses. Isn't that exciting? Not as exciting as penguins, David reckoned, but each to their own. Thing is, I have to catch the next ship out, or there won't be another weeks. She'll be docking any minute. His face dropped like a calving glacier. Wait, what? You're leaving? Today? Now? He jumped up, then hovered helplessly. She looked only slightly guilty. Sorry, Dave. Short notice, I know, but you'll be fine. It's been fun. So much nicer living together than the first time, and your cooking's much better. She gave him a firm, warm hug as he stood stiffly, arms by his side like a baffled emperor penguin incubating an egg. Don't go! I have to. It's an amazing opportunity. Besides, Jamie's getting out soon. He can join me in Finland. Desperately, David flourished the crochet bouquet, a woolen reproach to the fact, as he now realized, he'd never bought her flowers even once in the 3 years they were together. Wait! These are for you! Her puzzlement melted into a smile. Oh, thanks, Dave. They're beautiful, but they'll get crushed in my backpack. Why not save them for your next colleague? A welcome present. I'm sorry, he blurted as she hefted her baggage and headed to the door. Helen stopped and turned. For what? For taking you for granted. For just leaving. For never being your friend. She shook her head, green eyes sparkling. Silly. That's all ancient history. I mean, yes, I was really hurt at the time. Got depressed, went to therapy, blamed myself and all of that. Talk about living rent-free in my head. You had a penthouse apartment and for years. She laughed, gaily, evidently delighted at having served Internal Dave his eviction notice long ago. But I got over it, she shrugged. And these last weeks hanging out with you have been great. It's so good we've both moved on. Take care of yourself, Dave, and thanks for the flowers. She waved and walked out into the swirling snow. David slumped at the table, cradled a crochet rose petal in cold fingers, and tried to remember the Finnish word for fuck.